Well, hi, everybody, and it is absolutely great to be here. I'm always excited when I get a chance to talk about Enveric Biosciences. I did want to thank Planet MicroCap for putting on this virtual conference. As I say, whenever I talk to people virtually, I just can't wait for 12 months from now when we have a chance to all be together and talking in person live. It's happening and it will happen soon. So Enveric Biosciences, we're about extending and enhancing the life of cancer patients who go through what are often debilitating issues post-cancer therapy. And we do it all with natural occurring compounds, starting with cannabinoids. And let's talk a little bit more about that story. As you know, all of you have seen these disclaimers, and I'll assume that you have read it, as we will be dealing with some forward-looking statements moving forward. So who is Enveric Biosciences? Well, as I mentioned, our mission is to extend and enhance the life of cancer patients who live with these very debilitating side effects of cancer therapy, and it allows us to create this vision of developing novel therapeutic drugs to increase the standard of care in these supportive care indications. You know, it's an area which is exceptionally large markets, very little clinical innovation, and in most cases, very low standards of care. And that's what brings this very unique opportunity to us. If I think of who we are today, we started trading on NASDAQ on December 31st, the final trading day of 2020, and a lot has happened. We've created a very strong financial base by raising over $26 million of capital. It provides us with right now 18 to 22 months of runway. We have absolutely no debt. We have strong liquidity, and we have an incredibly clean cap table. So we've started with that strong financial base to allow us to execute on our business plan. Internally, we continue to progress 3 targeted clinical initiatives, one in glioblastoma, one in radiodermatitis, and one in chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy. We hope to have 2 of those in the clinic by the end of 2021. And I continue to say it, and I'm not sure we can stress it enough, these are large unmet medical needs. And finally, a big part of our strategy will continue to be targeting business development, and we'll talk about that a little more as we move through the presentation. I can't go any further without talking about leadership, because I'm not sure I've ever seen a great success story without a really strong leadership team. And in the world of microcap stocks, leadership starts with the board, and leveraging the skill sets and the network of those board of directors, allowing you to execute on your business plan. And I'm so proud of the team we put together on our board. Our scientific advisory council, which in our case represents 2 leading researchers in the world of cannabis and biotech, one in Israel and one in the United Kingdom, and then 2 key world-class oncology physicians, one at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, and one at the Sunnybrook Medical Center in Canada. And finally, our management team. Lots of experience, people who have been successful in a number of different venues, and maybe most important, a group that has the desire and the capability to do great things for patients and great things for investors all at the same time. So let's move forward and talk about our strategy. And it really comes down to this. We're about developing and identifying undervalued, under-researched, naturally occurring compounds and advancing these compounds in partnerships with leading clinics and plans to partner for commercial operations. It's really this. We identify therapeutic solutions from natural compounds who have some anecdotal clinical evidence behind them suggesting that we have an ability to change the standard of care. We then research these compounds through what I'll call the traditional drug delivery process, but with world-class oncology centers and world-class oncology physicians. And then we leverage this business model by partnering with experts in other fields where it's not our core competency. Think of CMC as a really good example. And that's who we are. And then we deal with business development because, you know, really our strategy is a little different than a lot of biotechs. You know, traditional biotechs have brilliant people who develop a molecule or a drug delivery platform and then identify the target population that this will affect the best. We've turned that around. We're a patient-centric company that has identified this large unmet medical need in the area of support care indications, and are looking at the most efficacious way to treat these patients. It could be internal development, or it could be finding the most appropriate therapeutic solutions through business development, and we'll continue to march down both of these pathways as we move the company forward. I mentioned earlier, it's been a busy last 3 months. We came on to NASDAQ on December 31st, as I mentioned. On January 15th, we had the first of 2 direct registered offerings, which, as I say, eventually with 2 offerings and some exercise of warrants, we have now raised over $26 million of capital. We continue to progress our clinical initiatives. And then on February 25th, we announced what we're very excited about. We think of it as a building block in our ability to shore up our supply chain with an exclusive agreement with a company called Pureform Global. We'll talk about that more. And then on March 10th, our first licensing agreement, as we licensed in 5 compounds, which again, I'll talk about in a little while. So it's been a busy 3 months. We found ourselves in a very positive position, but the best is really yet to come as we move through 2021 into 2022. So let's talk about supportive care and cannabinoid therapy. And I think it starts with that these cannabinoid derivatives can be leveraged across multiple delivery methods in these support care indications. These are large, multi-billion-dollar markets. I mentioned this earlier. There's been very little clinical innovation over the past several decades, and the standard of care is extremely low. And being that it is superficial and lacking this clinical innovation, targeting these unmet medical needs provides both time and cost efficiency on our path to commercialization, and we're very excited about moving forward with it. Our pipeline today is the following. This is our internal pipeline with glioblastoma in a preclinical stage, radiodermatitis also in a preclinical stage, and chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy still in the discovery, moving into the preclinical stages. And now let's go into each one of these in just a little more detail. I start with radiation-induced dermatitis. You know, many of you probably know that 50% of patients who are diagnosed with cancer will receive some form of radiation treatment. What you may not know is that 95% of these patients will form some level of radiodermatitis. We think there's an ability utilizing cannabinoidal therapy that we can eliminate it in some degrees and reduce in an awful lot of other situations. Right now, we're scheduled for an IND filing in Q3 and a phase 1/2 study starting by the end of 2021. Secondarily is chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy. And as many of you know, this is really the degeneration of the peripheral senses, or as we think of the peripheral nerves. The symptoms, as you've probably heard, there's tingling or pins and needle sensation, a lot of pain and burning, and oftentimes difficulty with the fine motor skills. We really believe that cannabinoidal therapy makes so much sense here. As we already know through the published papers, cannabinoid therapy reduces pain intensity, it has anti-inflammatory relief, and it relaxes the muscles. In this case, we see an IND filing in early 2022. And then finally is glioblastoma. Now, this, as you know, is not actually a supportive care indication, but rather a chance to use anecdotal data to trial CBD in a combination therapy with the current standard of care, which is temolazide. Dr. Tali Segal from the Hebrew University is our primary investigator. We have already had IRB approval from the Raven Institute on a phase 1/2 trial, and we are now awaiting Ministry of Health approval after resubmitting a protocol in this area. We're excited about it, and it will continue to provide a directive and some direction around combination therapies in use with other current standards of care. So those were the 3 clinical initiatives that we have continued to progress internally. I mentioned this earlier, but on February 25th, we announced an agreement with Pureform Global. And that agreement is that we will have an exclusive to this pharmaceutical grade CBD and soon to be CBG for our supportive care indications. And really what it does is it provides us with a proven, consistent product for our upcoming clinical trials in a CGMP environment and FDA-approved facilities both here in the U.S. and in the UK. But it also creates a really interesting opportunity to collaborate with this great company and their scientific group around development opportunities for other areas of support care. We're excited about this. We think it puts a building block in our ability to look at our supply chain more effectively. And then on March 10th, we announced an agreement with a company called Biotech. So what this does is it provides Enveric new therapeutic options as we acquired an exclusive perpetual license from Diverse for 5 molecules, 4 of them in the dermatology space and 1 that is more pain-focused. And all of this is utilizing conjugation therapy with a unique linker molecule. This really does have an opportunity, if successful, and these are early days, to create a new class of drugs to target these supportive care indications. We're excited about it. This is what I like to think of as provides us with more shots on goal. We're going after a number of indications. We're going after a number of therapeutic options to address these. Think of it today. We have a novel formulation in dermatitis. We have a combination therapy in glioblastoma. And now we have research and development being done in the conjugation space. All of that to give us more shots on goal to do great things for patients moving forward. And we have a number of additional world-class institutional partners that we continue to deal with, both for their knowledge, for their data, and for the opportunity to work with them and collaborate as we move the company forward. And we'll continue to build on those catalysts as we speak. Talking about catalysts, if we look at the key milestones that investors should be looking at between now and the end of the year, there are 4 key ones. Radiation dermatitis, we expect an IND filing in Q3. Glioblastoma, we expect a Ministry of Health approval again by the end of Q3. Radiation dermatitis and glioblastoma, we expect to initiate trials in a phase 1/2 approach by the end of 2021. Now, one can't go through a presentation regarding a biotech company using cannabinoid therapy without talking about the Jazz Pharmaceutical announcement to buy GW. And, you know, I think if we look back, the GW story is such a positive one. This is a company that started in 1998, so it's not an overnight success. They took a sophisticated approach to the biotech industry, and because of it, today, children who live with special forms of epilepsy and families are dealt with a much better and more optimistic situation than they did before. And 7.2 million, it says 6.7 here, it ended up being, I believe, 7.2 when you took in all the contingencies, is a huge amount of money. And what it does is it validates the fact that cannabinoid therapy has actually gone mainstream. And it validates that regulators see this differently. You know, the FDA, and when their panel voted on Epidiolex, it was a unanimous decision to approve it. That happens very rarely in the world of FDA panels. It validates that society is ready for this, and it validates that even the politicians, one by one, continue to believe that this therapy is mainstream and can help patients as we move different therapeutic formulations and solutions forward. So Enveric Biosciences, where are we today? Well, I think the investment highlights look something like this. We have built a very strong financial base with $20+ million in cash on our balance sheet, no debt, strong liquidity, and a very clean cap table. And that allows us to continue to meet the internal execution demands of these large markets. We've already, in an early days, created a number of ways that we can win a bunch of shots on goals. We've created innovative scientific solutions, both within cannabinoids on conjugation, formulation, and combination. And because of that, we have fast, affordable paths to commercialization. And finally, I started the presentation off with this. It does come down to leadership. Our leadership team has a huge amount of experience and success along the way. Our board of directors, we continue to leverage their skill sets and their network in our scientific advisory board, world-class researchers and clinicians. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening to the presentation. I hope that gives you a perspective of where Enveric Biosciences is, and more importantly, where we're going as we move the company forward in quarters 2, 3, and 4. Now, I have been told that I have time for answering just one question. There have been a number that have come in, but let me answer this one. I think it's an interesting one as it's germane to some of our internal discussions. And somebody asks, do you believe that cannabinoid therapy will be able to address all of the indications within support care, or will you need to look outside of cannabinoid care into other naturally occurring substances? It's a great question. And as we look at some of these very large markets within support care, one of them that continues to come up, and which is huge, and it's in the area of what we call cancer-related distress, or the anxiety and mental health problems associated with people who go through cancer therapy and their families. And it creates this very large unmet medical need, which we actually are not convinced that cannabinoids are going to be able to address this, or at least not completely. And so we have started opening our minds to other areas. One area which is a hot topic today is psychedelics, and we do believe that there's an opportunity to potentially deal with this through different formulations within the psychedelic range of compounds that are becoming more prevalent and have had an appetite from regulators and an appetite from the investment community. And we continue to have discussions with a number of companies on if there's appropriate collaboration opportunities moving forward. Much more on that at some point in time, and we haven't made a final decision, but I think it is an interesting one to continue to at least pursue and determine whether it creates a way of becoming this patient-centered company that we are to address this specific area of support care. With that, I'm told that I am out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing to tell the story as time goes on. Bye for now.